So every time we talk about India, America, and students, we all end up thinking about just one thing, which is Indian students going to America to study, which is totally understandable since around 360,000 Indian students study in America. Now, that is a massive number. Indians are the largest source of foreign students in the US. They make up around 30% of all foreign students in America. But a couple of weeks ago, our team at the Hindustan Times decided to do something different. In a story we just wrote, I decided to take a look at the other side of the picture, which is US students coming to India to study. Now, ordinarily, you wouldn't think that there is much of a story here. After all, why would someone leave America to come and study in India? And that is also originally what I thought, if I'm completely honest. But I was wrong, because there is actually a really interesting story here. Now, our story used data from the Institute for International Education, which found that India attracted just 1,578 American students in 2023-24. Now, remember that around 300,000 American students study abroad every single year. That means India is attracting just 0.52% of all US students studying abroad. India attracts fewer US students than Belize, which is a country of 441,000 people. But the really interesting thing about this story is that those numbers weren't always that bad. In fact, just 10 years ago, India was one of the most popular study abroad destinations for US students. In fact, around 2013-2014, around 4,600 US students came to study in India. That made India the 11th or 12th most popular study abroad destination behind countries like Japan and Brazil. Of course, since then, those numbers have dropped almost 70%. So the question is, what in the world went wrong? And to explain that, I'll have to explain a little bit of the backstory. If you go back around 20 years, US interest in India was pretty limited. But that began to change around 2004-2005, when roughly 1,767 US students came to study in India. Now, that number is actually higher than the number is today. And in fact, it made India one of the top 25 global destinations for American students for the first time ever. Now, interest in India grew impressively after that. Just 7 years later, the number of US students in India more than doubled to around 4,600 students. And that made India the 12th most sought after study abroad destination in the world, just behind countries like Japan and Argentina. Numbers actually rose even further in 2016 and 2017. But after that, the data reflects a steady decline in interest in studying in India, which was made worse by the COVID-19 pandemic. The number of US students studying in India dropped by half in 2019-20 and then fell to just 16 students in 2020-2021. Now, the numbers have recovered since the pandemic, but they remain below comparable countries like Brazil. Brazil actually used to receive fewer American students than India prior to the pandemic, and now somehow receives more US students in India. Now, we spoke to a lot of educational consultants for this story, and they told us that the low ranking of Indian colleges and the inadequate infrastructure to support foreign students may be some key reasons why India is not attracting foreign students. Indian universities, even the IITs or IIMs, don't appear very highly in the global rankings. If somebody has access to colleges that are in the top rank in the world, why would they leave that and come to India? Secondly, I think most of the time our curriculum is very clearly laid out and can be very rigid. For example, one foreign student I interacted with said India has a very strict curriculum, says Milalani Batra, who runs education consultancy International Education Exchange. There are also practical concerns, like transferring college credits back home to their home institutions from Indian colleges that US students have to deal with. Another simple concern is that Indian universities often don't have the facilities to house foreign students on campus. We also spoke to Raj Chambadi, who is the president of the Illinois Institute of Technology, who told us that India isn't alone in having these problems. We are still navigating a prolonged post-pandemic lag. Study abroad programs to Asia have taken significantly longer to recover than those to Europe due to extended regional travel restrictions. Because student word of mouth is such a critical driver for these programs, that multi-year disruption severely fractured the enrollment pipeline to India. Historically, India's appeal to international students has centered on language immersion, cultural agility, and the liberal arts. However, with the US higher education increasingly driven by technology disciplines and immediate career outcomes, India must actively position itself to offer high-value, competitive opportunities for American students in cutting-edge technology, including artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and other emerging fields, Raja Chambadi told us. Now, you might ask why it matters if India doesn't attract that many US students. But this imbalance between India and America does have consequences, because the outbound flow of Indian students headed to America has expanded steadily. In 2023, India surpassed China as the leading source of foreign students heading to the US, with around 330,000 Indian students in America. That number has jumped around 10% in the year after that to around 360,000 students. So America benefits far more than India in this exchange of students, as hundreds of thousands of Indians go to American universities, pay tuition fees there, and stimulate the US economy, while the same doesn't happen for India. Education is also a soft power tool, which works for America because its universities are educating so many Indians who would probably bring a lot of those American values and American thinking back home. And that could work for India as well, if it were able to attract thousands of Americans to its shores. In fact, India's government is taking steps on this right now as we speak. Recently, the government think tank Niti Aayog announced plans to attract roughly 500,000 foreign students to India by 2047, which is an ambitious project when you think about the fact that India's international student population is currently around 58,000. So if India wants to achieve the ambitions it has set for itself, it looks like some serious changes would have to be made. Thanks so much for watching HT Explained with me, Shashank Mattoo. I'm Hindustan Times' America correspondent based in Washington, D.C.